Alright, we've gone through 2 iterations of outlines, and each time our shape gets a bit more refined. We get a little more detail out of each one. So what I'm about to do is create our actual line drawing, which is what we're going to end up colorizing and turning into our final piece of concept art. But before I do that, it's a good time to review and make sure that, if there are any last-minute changes you want to make. I think somebody walked by earlier and saw what I was working on and said they didn't really like what was going on here. I'm not really sure about the overall size of the head. I think it wouldn't be a bad idea if maybe the head was just a little bit bigger on the whole, and just really take the whole thing and cartoon it up by making the head a little bit oversized, just a tad, just something subtle. But you'll want to get all that kind of stuff done and finalized and satisfied before you create this initial line drawing. So let's jump in, and we can fix this area. Let's just start off by erasing it all together. And if I just tried to wing it, not with the pencil, but with the actual brush, maybe if we gave it a little more meat there on the underside, that might look a little bit better. And I think that does look a bit better. So I think we'll just go with that for now. Now, the head is a different story. What I'm going to do for the head is go back to our lasso tool, and we'll go right under the chin, and then we'll go right back here to the back of the head, and just grab everything else. And hit Control-T, and then I'm going to hold down Alt and Shift and just scale the whole thing up. I mean, just a little bit. Didn't even have to be very much. Pick it back up. Let me hit Control-H, too. We can hide that box. Yeah, much better. I mean, it's a subtle change, but it really, I like seeing the head get a little bit larger. Now, if you're really careful, you can find that corner piece again, that corner handle, and then we can actually blow it up a little. Whoa! Alright, this is a little bit too big. Let's see. I'm just trying to play with it for a minute and see what I like. Because if you make his head big, it's kind of like, as human beings, we're used to seeing, like, babies with oversized heads. And if something has a big head, then it helps kind of stimulate the idea that it's kind of a small creature, especially when it's a humanoid. So, let's say maybe something right in here for now. We can always change it later if we don't like it. Let's also hit Control-D to deselect. Actually, let's hit Control-Z. I want to leave it selected for now. I'm going to hold down Control and just scoot that over just a little bit. Okay, now we can hit Control-D, zoom in, see what that broke, if anything. Like, it broke the line right there, so we can erase that out. And we can redraw that so it connects okay. I think everything else in general worked out just fine. Maybe clean that just a tad. But I think this is looking pretty good. And I like the idea of the head being just a little bit bigger than it was. And that looks pretty cool. It's oversized now. But I think it'll work. And again, the cool thing about this workflow is that later on, if you're like, hey, the head's too big or whatever, we can actually take the entire image and we can select all of those pieces and we can shrink them down or scale them up as we need to. So don't dwell on it too much right now. Okay, so now let's go ahead and get our final line drawing in place. So I'm going to create a new layer once again. And I didn't mean to double click out there. I wanted to actually just change its name. So we'll hit cancel there. And we'll double click and we'll call this final with 2 A's because it's very final. Final line. Oh, okay. I'm hitting the A key on my tablet because apparently one of these buttons is bound to A, which is fantastic. Okay, so now that we have that, let's take Shape Outline 2, and I'll right-click on it, and we'll paste our layer style again, which will make it go gray and kind of fade it out for us. And now we'll just draw on Final Line, but I'm going to switch over my colors. We're going to actually start drawing in black now. Now, in this case, I'm going to be zoomed really far in, because now I'm concerned about line quality. I want my lines to look really good. So now I'm pretty much just tracing over what I already had, but I'm doing it very carefully. I mean, notice I'm still using little tiny brush strokes, but because I'm zoomed so far in, it looks like one nice flowing contiguous line. So that's where zooming can really help you out a bit. And this time I'll start at the head just for the fun of it. And say we lose like little features like that right there, we're going to completely smooth all that out. Let's also maybe take my brush size down. We'll go down to 2 pixels for this. This is going to take a little bit of time. If you've already got an idea of what I'm doing and maybe you'd like to go ahead and skip on to the next video where you can see it all done, that's cool, though something might change between now and then. You never know. Nothing should be considered finalized even at this stage. Alright. Okay, and now we can grab the corner of the eye. And sorry it gets really quiet, especially when I'm concentrating. I'm hardly breathing, so it's hard for me to keep talking about what I'm doing. I'm going to move the drawing around so that I don't have to keep using that corner of my tablet where my hand will start striking those buttons. Great design on this tablet, really, where you can, if you're right-handed, you're going to keep nailing those buttons in the upper right-hand side. The funny thing is, if you're left-handed, you'll nail the buttons on the upper left-hand side. So just don't draw up there in that corner. Ever. And we'll round this out a little bit. Now, if you want to worry about line quality, you can take lines that represent edges that are... okay, hang on, before I get too far. If you wanted to assume that your light was coming from, say, this direction, so I'm going to say, this is your light, then you can start taking lines that represent surfaces that are facing away from the light, and you can make those a little thicker. That's just a kind of a cartooning thing, and it can usually give you really nice-looking line quality. Not something I really wanted to harp on too much, but I thought I'd bring it up, because like this line represents a surface that kind of points away from the light, so you could thicken this up. But you could leave these outer lines a little thin, or even thin them out even further than they are, like maybe go down to 1 pixel, and you start to get a differing line quality. You could maybe take this outer line for the cheek and really thin that out. Like we could erase it and step all the way down to a 1 pixel brush, so things get really thin out here. And then use that, because this is the side the light's coming from, so you wouldn't see a whole lot of really thick, bold shadowing or anything. It's not something you have to do, but in general it can look kind of nice if you do it. I'm going to switch up to 2, though, so I can get just a little bit of aliasing. See, because we're so close in, we can start really adding details to things like the jowls. You know, add a little bit of a lump right in there. And really kind of start having fun with the surface. Okay. And this is one of those lines that's kind of pointed away from our light source, so we could thicken this up a little bit. Kind of thin out as we get up here toward the top of the cheek. here, we'll do this kind of jowl crease. And see, by zooming in, I can still make those little tiny brisk lines that are really easy to create and really fast to drop down. But when you back out and we hide our outline, we're getting some really nice lines out of this. In fact, if I back all the way out to, and at 100% it's still looking good. So if we get to the point where we can start seeing the whole thing, it starts to look really nice. Now, in this particular case, Photoshop's zoom factor will distort things. So if things start looking really chunky, always check your zoom factor in Photoshop. And it's like I find that at 50% it looks pretty good. At 100%, of course, it looks awesome. At some of the in-between sizes, your zooming will make your drawing look a little terrible. Okay, let's go back to our lips. And let's, we could define kind of where the top of the lip is going to be. And get those, two kind of indentions that come out of the nose. Just something in place to kind of designate those. Go ahead and get this other pupil sketched in. See how that compares in size to the other pupil. Notice I always leave a little bit of a highlight sticking out. And, in this case it's coming out in the same direction as our light. Just keep stuff like that in mind. Because I've seen people, they'll create their pupil like this, even though their light's coming from up here, and that just looks weird. So, anyways, it looks like a good mole. Oh, sorry. All right, so we'll leave some division in the forehead. I guess I should zoom back in, keep this nice and neat. Thicken that up here on the outside a little bit. Which leads us to the ear, which I'll leave really thick here at the base. I guess I could zoom out just a little bit more. And let's have a bit of fun with the ear. We'll start chopping out some notches out of it. I think he's been in a couple of scuffles. So a little more definition there to the ear. I guess we need to go around the cranium before we get too far away. Let's keep this really thin, because this line really is facing right into our light source. And as we start to get away from the angle at which our light would be hitting it most directly, we can step up to a 2-pixel brush. And don't worry about little tiny surface irregularities. They're going to make his head look kind of lumpy anyway, which is cool. And we'll go up one stage bigger as we get around here toward the back of the head. Probably about as big as we need to go, though. and see how that looks. Maybe a little too lumpy. I don't know. Maybe I'm being a little over picky, but let's clean that out. And go back down to a 2-pixel brush. I'll just kind of smooth that section out just a little bit. And I don't mind lumps, but that was maybe a little bit too far. Okay, cool. So now we can start moving our way down the rest of the body. So you see where this is kind of a slow process, and in the end it's worth it, because you end up with a really nice looking line drawing, which, a couple of hours ago was just a bunch of scribbles on a skeletal form. And maybe smooth some of this out. We can leave this nice and thick too if we want to, because again, it's kind of on the far side of our light source. And let's see, do I have a zoom factor? No, I don't. I'll hold down, Alt, and use my mouse wheel. Let's get a little bit closer. Okay. Try to get some actual swooping action by drawing. Maybe I can speed this up just a little bit. Now that we're onto some bigger areas with some much smoother lines. Oops, didn't mean to do that. I was trying to move the document. I'm getting a little bit too far away from what I'm doing. Also, a side note about using Photoshop. Sometimes those little tiny brush strokes, like the technique of drawing lines kind of like this, where you draw them kind of a chunk at a time, that can be beneficial in that, like if you draw a really long line, but then you mess it up at the end, undoing that whole thing means that you lose that. So you wouldn't really want to undo that. You'd want to just instead maybe switch over to your eraser and just erase the end. But if you don't want to do that at all, like if you just want to be able to undo the very end, if you're drawing in little chunks, and as you get down here, you place one chunk badly, you can just hit Control-Z. So whichever technique you think works best for you. I kind of go back and forth, you'll see. Let's give that nice and thick there. Let's see here. Maybe I could undo that. Maybe we could step back just a little bit, because I do have these big, long, sweeping lines here. I don't really handle it that way. Let's keep it nice and round. There's also something else I'm trying to keep in mind while I'm doing this, and that is that I am trying to avoid a lot of holes. And by holes, I mean areas where, like, if I'm drawing connections, like in between knuckles, like I'm doing here, I don't really want there to be any gaps, like so. And the reason for that is actually going to become apparent just a little bit later. So I'm going to go ahead and close that in for now. Those gaps can really bite us, or they will bite us sooner or later. So there we can see 1, 2, 3, 4 knuckles starting to appear. Okay, before we leave out of here, not sure about that angle. Maybe we should turn that back. Nah, maybe it was better the way it was. Let me back out and have a look. Looks a little funny, but I'm almost ready not to really worry about it, because when we start shading that in, a lot of that's going to kind of disappear. That'll be just kind of a darker area of the hand anyways, so I'm not going to get myself too bogged down in little details like that. Let's maybe take one more step inward. Moving up the bicep. Okay, so now we can do a couple of other things too. We can kind of outline some of the muscle structures of the forearm. A little bit of a line there. We can get some outlines for where the knuckles are going to be. Some shape for the hand. Okay, looking alright so far, I think, and let's just jump back in over here. I'm going to try to pick up the pace a little bit, so if my lines get a little bit messier than they were a minute ago, it's just because I'm just trying to get through this just for video purposes. Because I think at this point you've got the idea that if you really zoom in and take your time, you can make really clean-looking lines. I'll keep these looking nice and neat, so there's no little filings hanging off them or anything like that, but I'll kind of pick things up a little bit. Go ahead and do his arm before I go all the way down the torso. That worked really well. You have to hold my breath when I do lines like that. Ah, missed that one. Got close. Yeah, I'm just not hitting it. The tablet keeps shifting on me. I think that'll work. I don't want to make that line look like it's coming from the nipple, so we'll keep things separated a little bit. I kind of like that. Okay, moving along. And don't worry about the stick. Go ahead and draw as if the stick wasn't there. That was just there as kind of a representation so that everybody kind of remembered what we were doing. You can see where we were using that pencil tool earlier. Okay. And we can curve this around. Nah, I won't do that just yet. We'll just do that with shading. For now, let's leave it simple. Thought about adding some, just a little bit of subtle shadowing there, but changed my mind. Alright. Coming in. Step at a time, though. Alright. Quick break to step back and take a look at what we've done. Let's trace around our nipple here, and then we'll draw the inside of it. Go ahead and maybe do some guidelines for shading here, but I'll zoom in so I can create them nice and smoothly. Okay, and looks like we're ready now to move down the torso. Okay. And I'm going to take this little line here at the end. We'll make it get a little bit fat right there where the love handle comes together. Got a little bit too shaky. Right. My eyes are actually starting to dry out because I keep forgetting to blink. Kind of improvise a little bit there on the ankle and make that a little more apparent as to exactly what that is. Okay. And we'll add in our little guidelines here for shading. this one kind of faint, and then we'll thicken that one up a little bit. I'll just sketch this in really quickly. I'm not too worried about it because it won't be with us much longer. I guess while we're here, we go ahead and get the feet out of the way. Too shaky. I don't mean to be too much of a stickler for that, but I do want this to look good when I'm done with it. Okay. Just couldn't hold it at that angle. I'm going to try drawing from a different position. There we go. It's just not working for me. I have my hand tilted at a really funny angle. There we go. That'll work for now. Up around. I think after careful consideration, I'm going to kind of omit that lump. I don't think I like it. It's a cool idea, but it just didn't work out for me in the end. Alright. Almost done. Okay, let's take a step back, add in some more musculature lines and definition lines for where certain things go, like the kneecap. That's a little bit too pronounced. Of course, we definitely need to make sure we get the belly button in. Okay, and I think we've got our line drawing done. No. I'm going to assume that we're all going to remember where that light's coming from, and just so I don't go crazy from seeing it there all the time, I'm going to go ahead and erase this. And there we go. We have our line drawing complete, and we are ready to begin the colorization process, which we will start in the next video.